Welcome to the Legendary Upside podcast. My name is Pat Corain. You can find all of my content at legendaryupside.com. Today, I'm joined by Jakob Sanderson. Jakob, how's it going?
Going good. Best ball season is fully upon us now. We've transitioned from the Dynasty podcast to the Best Ball podcast. It's great. How far along are you on instant recall of the Week 17 games? Are you already just
I'm there.
I'm there? You're already there?
Yeah, shout out to the Week 17 mnemonics that I've got up for free on Legendary Upside, which I made them. So it's like, you know, it's more impactful than just reading them.
Saying shout out to like
shout out to my own
like third party body, but it's just shout out to your own.
No, it's the Levitan. It's the Levitan shout out to myself. Shout out to me for making the mnemonics, but they worked, and I remember all the games very, very simply. So yeah, and if I forget, I'm like, oh yeah, it's the Dave Canales revenge game.
Yeah. To me, the best ball season always becomes fully ingrained in like two phases, which is first, you get that feeling when, it's like by the end of the summer, you're just so dialed in to best ball drafts. Like, exactly where you can like build every stack and what rounds, like how you need to draft, how you're like, oh, if I draft this quarterback, that means I need to get one of these wide receivers, which means I can't take a running back at that round. Like you're so locked in. And then the other stage is like these Week 17 games. Once the schedule comes out, like the beginning of every best ball season is almost bewildering because to me, it's like a big list of players. Like I don't really know like what each decision means for other decisions. Right. Like I'm clicking a player because I like them more. Later, I end up having regrets. And then, you start being able to build more back to front as you just kind of get used to it a little bit more. And then once you get that instant Week 17 game, that's where you're like, all right, shift into drive, and we're good for the rest of the season here.
Yeah, I agree. I think the schedule helps a lot because you know where you're sort of building in optionality and building in flexibility. Where you like, I'm going to build this side of it, and if it gets blown up, then I know I can go to the other side of that game. But there's certain games where you can't go to the other side of it. It's already going to be okay. You're not going to really be able to backdoor stack like the Lions 49ers. You can do it with Goff, but like Philly, Dallas, yeah, you gotta prioritize the second quarterback if that's kind of your plan. And then others, you can just like the Minnesota Packers, you can just sit and take JJ McCarthy if you want to do that. So yeah, and that's kind of the discussion for today. So we're going to be talking about the landscape of these best ball drafts and how kind of to attack these drafts from a macro perspective. I reached out to you after reading your article, Navigating the 2024 Best Ball Mania Economy. I thought it was a really awesome article on thinking about thinking. People should check it out. But you go through and look at early tight ends, wide receivers and running backs, and kind of where like what's happening with the dead zone, where wide receiver capital has gotten to, where these profiles are being priced now. And to me, this is kind of like the big thing of it's really a game right now of like, how do I build teams that actually make sense? It's not really like, especially at the non-wide receiver positions, like identifying the values is pretty easy, but then it's like, how do I get the values on my team without killing it? That's kind of where I'm at right now. And I max entered the puppy on almost entirely slow drafts. And I'm just right now in like the 5th, 6th, 7th round of all of these. And it's been actually, I've just been pushing it. I've been pushing it on structure. Like I might go Puka, JT, Allen, Kelce, James Cook's there. So I take James Cook. So now I've got like one.
That team is like the guy on the balcony with the lighter where he's like, ooh.
Yeah. No, it's totally dead. Like, but I'm just like, I'm gonna, I'm talking about how you have to take wide receivers in the early rounds. You must have wide receiver firepower. But I'm like, let me see if I take basically like guys I think are good picks the entire way. Or that team even better, right? Might be like Brees in round 1 and, Ayuk in round 2. And then, but then I grab, you know, I grabbed Allen, Kelce, Cook, Coleman in round 6. You know, I'm like, all right, if I need this, if I'm betting on the Bills in a big way, maybe Coleman is the answer. Mm-hmm. But it's like literally like one wide receiver through 5 rounds when we talk about how you need at least 3. And so I'm trying to really push it. I don't think any of this is going to work, though. I think all of these teams are dead. And so I don't know, like, are you trying to do any of that stuff?
So I tried to do more of that, I think, last year. And the reason for that was I talked about this a lot in the piece. I thought one of the biggest differences between this year and last year at the running back market is like one thing is the same, which is that these sort of post wide receiver window or post dead zone running backs are just like available and they start, which never really happened before that I can recall until last year. Last year, this was guys like Isaiah Pacheco and Rachaad White, James Conner, like that. That's kind of guys where it's like, oh, like these guys are going next to like Sky Moore, right? These guys are going next to, Jameson Williams or whatever. You can just draft them. And that's happening again this year for sure, right? We have like Najee Harris. We have Tony Pollard. We have James Conner again. We have like sort of these boring starters there. And then we also have fun, kind of upside bets like a Jalen Warren, a Tyjae Spears, a Chase Brown, Jonathan Brooks, all that stuff. So, what I looked at last year was like what we also had was running backs in the traditional dead zone rounds, right? Like, I don't even know if the dead zone really exists anymore with the new market, but in the rounds that used to be the dead zone, we had these like really compelling
one guy. like I think Rachaad White's a dead zone back. He's like right, the only one.
The dead zone at this point is more like an archetype of running back than it is like a
right.
number of rounds, right?
Right.
But last year we had guys like Breece Hall going in. I mean, it ended up going way later, but for most of draft season was going in like the 3-4 turn range. We had Travis Etienne there. We had Jahmyr Gibbs. Hall and Gibbs are now round 1 picks, and Travis Etienne's still where he was last year, and he was fine last year. But like we have a little bit more information on him now, and that
he kind of wasn't
that
fine.
He's probably appropriately priced.
Yeah, he scored a lot of touchdowns, but his rushing efficiency was bad.
Right. Well, I mean, he was fine. Like if you picked Travis Etienne last year at 3-4,
yeah, you feel like okay.
Totally fine pick. Like it didn't submarine your team in any way. But at
one point he looked like a league winner, and then he kind of cooled off a little bit at the end. I mean, he wasn't fine from like how good is this guy?
No, he wasn't super efficient. The receiving was like better, but it wasn't great. And, at this point, we now have 2 full seasons of information on him. And I don't think that he's overpriced, but I think he is like, acceptably priced where he is rather than last year where I think there was more breakout potential. So you look around, right? It's like him, it's like Cook, it's Pacheco, it's Rachaad White. You mentioned it's Ken Walker, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs. Like these guys, I think some of them are like the running back market is just such that I wouldn't really argue that any of them is like a horrendous price, but I don't look at any of these guys where I'm like, I need to build my portfolio around getting exposure to these guys. It's more like you said, like if one of them happens to fall to me, like sure. But if I look at what am I going to build my portfolio around, it's just not this group of running backs. So if I am pushing it, it's about the tight ends. I think we're pretty aligned on how we view the importance of taking advantage of this tight end pricing. And then where I'm really torn is on the quarterbacks, because there are early quarterback prices I really like, but there's also late quarterback prices that I really like. And there's like middle round quarterback prices that I really like. And so oftentimes I'll do these teams where I take a Josh Allen or I take an Anthony Richardson. And then, I get to the back of the drafts and I'm like, man, you know what? Like I feel really light at wide receiver here. I wish I could just like take Drake Maye and turn Anthony Richardson into a wide receiver.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when I'm doing these puppies, I'm going through. If I find a team where I went like 4 straight wide receivers, I'm giddy. Because it's almost like when you take these like running back values or tight end values or quarterback values, it's kind of like you're robbing yourself of future flexibility. Like you're just gonna have to. You're like, all right, this is fine because I'll just hammer wide receiver later. But like it gets hard to hammer wide receiver later, because later, let's say later means round 6 and on. Like in round 6, we're already to a pretty clear kind of tier break where like you have kind of in round 5, honestly, like depending on how you feel about like Xavier Worthy and Jaden Reed. But those guys
Once
to
like
me
Christian Kirk goes, I'm already getting a little uncomfortable.
Exactly. And I actually think Kirk should be in the 4th.
Yeah, I think he's a great price.
So I completely agree. Once Kirk's off the board, then it's like you're already like a little like Reed feels a little shaky to me as a 5th round pick, but I'm doing it like a lot. Like I'm taking him a lot.
Yeah. He feels like uncomfortably like Elijah Moore from like 2 years ago.
Yeah, he really does. I don't know. I might be done taking him after that. That feels too real.
Xavier I'm taking him too, but that like I have like a devil on my shoulder that's like he's gonna not work out. Yeah,
Xavier Worthy feels a little like Elijah Moore in the rookie year, though. We'll get the rookie season out of it.
Yeah, except of course Elijah Moore in the rookie year is now a 5th round pick. So that's that's nice.
And then but then like those 2 guys to me, I'm like really hoping are there, even though I have some concerns. And then it's like, you're kind of right to the other rookies, Rome Odunze, Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman goes a little later, but if I've got Allen, I'm pulling him up. Yeah. So it's kind of, I mean, those guys compared to someone like a Joe Mixon, right? I mean, Joe Mixon's going to score more points, but you can't, it's like this thing of like, yeah, I know Joe Mixon's going to score more points, but guess what, buddy? You took Jonathan Taylor and Breece Hall and you took a tight end. Like you're done unless you get wide receiver points, and they're going quick. It's not going to be any better next round. 2 rounds from now, you're going to be debating like Curtis Samuel over the 15 running backs currently on the board going ahead of him. Or Mike Williams. Are you going to pull up Mike Williams ahead of like really strong running back picks, around after that? So it's just like you get increasingly boxed out. It doesn't like get better.
Yeah. The score more points thing is I think just a bit of a fallacy because, if the score more points argument was perfectly salient, then like we would just take Josh Allen first overall because he will score the most points. So like we already know like logically that like we don't just draft based on who will score the most points.
Right.
Like, nobody does that. So I think when people like simplify the argument to say that, it's like sounds like a good point, but I don't know that it is a good point. Usually I think like in a quote unquote like efficient market, maybe we would draft wide receiver and running back in such a way where like roughly the highest scoring at each scores a similar amount of points. But I don't even know if that's true because you think about the dynamics of this tournament and this game. First off, you have to start 3 receivers. You have to start 2 running backs. And then you can either do 4 and 2 or 3 and 3. But like on average, you're starting more wide receivers and running backs. So it just makes sense that they're in higher demand, right? That's why we value running backs more than quarterbacks and tight ends. You have to start one more of them. Right. And then beyond that, you just think about the dynamics of this. Like we are playing for a 100th percentile team. And we all know that it is easier to get a like projectable RB1 from like a total scrub in the late rounds, just due to some dude getting injured in front of them or some coach making a decision we can't foresee, than it is from the wide receiver position. So like once you accept that, like, we don't know who yet, but some team is going to have Joe Mixon effectively in the 16th round in week 17.
Right.
Like you just kind of have to build off the premise that like, that's somewhat of a precondition in this economy almost for winning. Like there's going to be some guy who maybe not even over the full season. Like maybe it won't be Kyron Williams. Maybe it'll just be Ty Chandler who, didn't do much, but then all of a sudden we get to the best ball playoffs. He projects as good as, Travis Etienne did. And it's like some team's going to have that.
Devin Singletary, Chuba Hubbard. Like it doesn't have to be Kyron. Yeah.
Right. Like you just have to build knowing that like some team is going to have that. There's going to be teams in your pods that have that, and they're going to have the wide receiver firepower that you don't have. So I think that that's to me the key thing to remember. I don't know that you want to go overboard. Like I probably will build, I already did this last year. Like I built fewer like true 0 RB, like 6 wide receivers in the first 7 rounds teams, because I think you want to be careful of diminishing returns. I think you want to be careful where you're getting enough wide receiver firepower for sure. Maybe not going super overboard. The interesting thing to me
if you go overboard at this in these rooms, I do think it's ideological. Like I'm actually not worried about like when I tell people like make sure you have enough wide receiver firepower. I'm almost never worried like, oh, I hope they don't take 8 wide receivers in a row, because how could you?
You never want to.
How could you?
Want to.
There's so many temptations. Like you have so much commitment. If you can get to round 9 with 8 wide receivers, like that is, I'm impressed. I don't know how you did it. There's so many potential detours you can take.
So many. It's, I mean, I'm curious what you think on this. I found myself probably drafting more like boomer wide receivers than I ever have before.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason for that is like what we mentioned with running backs, you know, especially last year, I was always making the case like, and I've heard you make a similar one. Like, look how many projectable points are available in like round 8 and round 9. If you're drafting an early running back, we don't have to draft for projectable points. They're available later. You have to draft for these like really high upside profiles, right? Like prioritizing like a Breece Hall ahead of like a Najee Harris, right? And wide receiver, oftentimes it's been the case where, you know, there are these younger profiles available throughout. Here, they're getting so squeezed up, right? Like I don't know if I'm going to say that it's like a illogical pick, because I think we should be betting on tail outcomes beyond the first few rounds of the draft. But like from a just is it likely this guy will pay off his ADP perspective? Like it's not likely Keon Coleman will pay off his ADP. It's just not. Like I think over 50% of the time he's a bad pick. That doesn't mean he's a bad pick, because I think like you could make an argument that in the 20 to 30% of the time he pays off, he has opportunities to pay it off like to a massive degree where he separates.
He can pay off massive. Yeah, for sure.
So I'm not saying he's a horrible pick there, but
it's a little rich.
If we're in this,
it's definitely a little rich.
This world where, like you have a very few opportunities to gather this wide receiver firepower, and you're just trying to get like enough to survive and then build the rest otherwise. Like I find myself gravitating more towards the comfort of a Chris Godwin or a Terry McLaurin or a Deontay Johnson than I thought that I normally would. Like if you look at it, it's like, you know, you only have 4 chances to draft these kind of wide receivers. It's like Jayden Reed better hit, because if Jayden Reed doesn't hit, right, if he's just like Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman year 2, like your team is like closer to getting dusted off of that in a way that it never has before, because you're not getting that many good wide receiver bets, especially if you're drafting like I'm drafting, which is like I'm not taking the sort of C tier projectable routes bets on like the Lockett's and the Suttons and the Mike Williamses, and like my back half of my wide receiver room is mostly, you know, it's Downs, it's Leggett, it's Wicks, it's the Patriots wide receivers, it's the Broncos wide receivers. Like, you know, those guys aren't doing anything probably in the first half of the year. So
Downs might. I mean, Downs.
Yeah, Downs will. Yeah. But like, you know, if I'm putting like Troy Franklin and Javon Baker on my team, like I'm doing that for week 14.
Right. Right.
But if like Jayden Reed and Keon Coleman are like submarining this team, then you know, week 14 is pretty theoretical.
yeah, you're never seeing it. Or week 15. So I'm actually taking some of those guys. I am taking some of like Sutton. I take some of Mike Williams. I take some Josh Palmer. You know, like I know these guys are gross, but like I think Tyler Lockett's a pretty good pick. In a similar way to like, you know, the way we kind of had to come around to Josh Jacobs, you know, that profile that none of us like. Now we came around after he had his breakout season generally. You know, I wasn't taking him before his 2022 breakout, but afterwards, right, he kind of teaches you like, all right, we want to be open-minded to these guys who we weren't taking before. And we're both taking Najee Harris. I'm taking a lot more Jaylen Warren, but I'm taking Najee Harris. He's a fine pick.
Currently 36% Jaylen Warren and 21% Najee Harris.
Beautiful. I mean, they're both good picks. I mean, Najee, it's like a lot of the stuff. It's funny. Like I've been texting with Rotopack because he's kind of out on Jaylen Warren, or he has concerns, right? He's like he's never going to get the full workload. He's like basically 2022 Pollard, and I'm like,
wait,
this guy's going to smash. He's 2022 Pollard. Yeah, no, I know. We're like making the same case, but one of us likes.
Why is that a bad thing? He was like the best pick of that. Brown.
You'd have to ask Pat. I think he's the best pick on the. But I think he's basically very skeptical that he's going to ever get the volume he needs to fully get there. Yeah.
Well, he will if Najee gets hurt. You're getting efficiency. Like it's the same case that we made for 2022 Tony Pollard, which is like the outcome where he just like dusts Najee off the field is like very low, and that's not really what.
That's not what we're betting on.
It's like you're betting on he's going to get half the work and he's going to be really efficient. And if Najee gets hurt, then you're getting all the work, and it's going to be a round one level pick because he's good.
And like an absolute smash like DFS style, like get this guy in your lineups, like
which that was Pollard, right? It was like we got spike weeks with Zeke, and then we also got a month where Zeke was gone, and Pollard was like clearly the RB1 in fantasy.
We only had 2 games actually that Zeke missed that season. It's kind of wild.
The Bears game and the Packers game. Yeah. And then then the Vikings game was his like biggest game, but Zeke was back and he just like didn't really do much.
Right. So anyway, we've come around. We've shifted our mindset a little bit about these running backs that we didn't like before. Now they're available at cheaper prices. I'm still struggling a little bit. I was talking with Gretch yesterday about DeAndre Swift, who I'm struggling to take, but he was like kind of pointing out the similarities to like Rashad White.
I kind of am into Swift, but I don't know. He's like melted my brain he like lives rent free in my head. I have like
you've been right. I think you're the only person in the industry who's like correctly swum with Swift the whole time. Like, no, he's about to sink again. You predicted it.
I've had a lot of like what's weird about Swift is that I've had like if people read my writing closely or like listen to my podcast on a weekly basis, I've had like usually nothing but correct Swift takes, to be honest. But nobody thinks that I have correct Swift takes because people just like think that my take is like guy sucks. So like anytime he does anything good, then they just like own me. And I'm like, actually, like I was taking him a lot of them. And then I'm like, you should sell him. And then he's bad. And then it's like a whole thing.
It's your fault for having nuance over time. Once you're in on a guy, you're always in forever. And once you're out, you're always out forever. That's how this works.
So I think if my role as DeAndre Swift whisperer, I think I am kind of in this year.
Okay.
Mostly because he's pretty cheap. They gave him a lot of money.
He is pretty cheap. Yeah.
And while I don't think that he is good, the difference between him and like I listened to the show that you the ADP chasing this week where you were talking about him versus like a Miles Sanders. And my case, Miles Sanders was the player that I had ranked furthest behind his ADP of anyone last year. Like I had 0% Miles Sanders. I thought he was an egregious pick. And my case against him was like,
where did you have him ranked though? Did you have him
hundreds?
Okay.
Yeah. Like I think you had him ranked in like the 10th round or something. Like he was completely buried. It was like my case for him was like follow the money to what? Because like okay, like even if we assume that he's gonna get the role, like he's physically incapable of pass catching. So like we're following them like, and that was the case. People were like, he's gonna get the 3-down roll, like they want him to, and I was like, but he can't. Like he can't do that. Like he just like functionally isn't able to be a pass catching running back. So like it's just not going to work. Or if they decide to insist that he's going to do it, maybe, but then he's just going to be like a pretty boring RB2. I didn't see any upside case. Swift is this like constant paradox in that he has all of the fantasy friendly attributes we want, except being good. So it's like you has like theoretical explosiveness that has sometimes been real and sometimes is less real. He definitely has pass catching ability. He has like enough size to play in goal line situations. It's just he makes a bunch of mind-numbing mistakes, which is a really awkward player profile to deal with because like in order to guess what's going to happen, we kind of have to get inside the coach's head more than you have to do for most players, where it's like you have to kind of figure out like, are the coaches going to be annoyed when he does dumb stuff or
it doesn't hit the right hole ever? And
yeah. So it's like I can say what I would do with DeAndre Swift. Just like I would stick his ass on the bench, to be perfectly honest. But like I don't know what an NFL coach would do. So like my bet is just like I just want to make sure the bet is calibrated, which is why I'm always like kind of half in, half out with Swift. because I think if the bet is calibrated where like his deficiencies are priced in and we're just getting kind of closer to a free roll on the upside of his archetype, like you mentioned with the Rachaad White, who's also a player who's like very fantasy friendly, but not very good. Right. Then like, sure, I'll make the bet on that and just sort of see what happens with the understanding that I could be wrong. I don't want to be too, I'm struggling to come up with the word. It's early. I don't want to be too stubborn. That's not the word I was going for, but I don't want to be too stubborn in saying like, because DeAndre Swift isn't my platonic ideal of a running back. Like I refuse to allow to draft him. Whereas
it's easy to like
bad in different ways. It's easier to write off, right? It's easier to be like Zeke's bad because he's also bad in ways that are bad for fantasy. Now I'm drafting Zeke this year, but
is he all of a sudden he catches a million passes? So Zeke's suddenly like a PPR scam. It's amazing. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, that was weird. Yeah, last year.
I know it's so weird, but he might be kind of like, is Zeke a great pick? He might be really good.
Yeah, pick. Probably. Right? Like I'm taking Zeke this year for sure because barring a trade, which I just think is maybe it'll happen, but I think it's kind of unlikely.
No, I think
like I want to look. Do I understand why a Super Bowl contender or like a team that thinks that they're a Super Bowl contender is choosing to start one of Zeke Elliott or Rico Dowdle at running back? It doesn't make sense to me. But like if that's what they're gonna do.
Yeah. So I think with Swift, like, yeah, it's like, so I'm kind of like on the fence here because on the one hand, I agree. It's kind of easy. And I see people do this all the time. And, if people are doing it all the time, like maybe I'm doing it too, and I don't realize it, right? Is that you kind of like decide what's going to happen in your head. Like there's a bunch of scenarios of the way things can play out, and you kind of gravitate to one of those scenarios, and you're like, can't draft DeAndre Swift because over the course of the season, they're going to realize, that he's not the steady, like basically I'm like, when you pay a running back like that to come in, it's actually pretty similar to the Miles Sanders thing where you're like, we're going to be drafting a rookie, number 1 overall. We need this guy to come in and help us have the running game that we want, running game defense. We're going to develop this guy. We're going to lean on this guy. This is the dude. He's going to help us play offense the way we want to play offense so we can be the type of team we want to be. And then DeAndre Swift shows up, and that's not really what he does. That's just not who he is. You can't like just lean on DeAndre Swift to power a traditional running game. Like that's just kind of, I don't think they're going to be happy with that. And then it's like, okay, we're going to kind of see Herbert in a Chuba type thing of like, he's actually doing what we want, like what we kind of feel like we need to get Caleb where we want to get him on the schedule we have for him and all that. Right. So like, that's the kind of, it's like a worry that then grows into like, I'm literally seeing like things play out, and it's hard to get it out of my head. There is the counter argument, I think. And anytime the counter argument is accepting like more chaos than you, it's probably the right way to think about it. But the counter argument here is just like, I don't know, he got a lot of money and he goes at like pick 84. Like, and the offense might be pretty good. So I probably need to mix him in a little bit more than I have recently.
That's why I think it's better than the Sanders bet. He catches passes and the offense is good. So like if he got a lot of money argument pays off, you're actually getting rewarded for it in a way that I feel like with Sanders, you probably weren't. Like the true upside of him, I think, was a lot lower than the Swift.
Plus part of it, right? The main thing is that Sanders was just a bad player-based bet. But, he would have had a better chance if Bryce Young was Caleb Williams, I think. We don't know for sure that Caleb Williams is going to be good, but probably going to be decently better than Bryce Young at the very worst.
Real receivers,
right?
They have a real team, so they should score touchdowns. Yeah.
So okay, so that's like the
we saw what happened if Miles Sanders had been good. It was Chuba Hubbard over the.
It was Chuba Hubbard,
who was not that interesting.
It's pretty interesting in the double digits, but it's not fun.
Right, but if you had drafted Chuba Hubbard in the 6th round, it was like right, if Miles Sanders had just gotten that role and he was Chuba Hubbard in the 6th round, he'd be like, kind of wish I didn't.
No, I agree. But that's the thing, is that Swift isn't in the 6th round. Normally, in 3-4 years ago, he would be in the 4th round, we would be easily, and this is what Ben was saying, is like, I wish he was going in round 4 so I didn't have to think about him, but he's not.
Totally. Yeah.
So I have to actually consider taking him. And, you know, these types of backs, plus some of the cases that we actually are excited about, like to me, Brooks, Jalen Warren, Jonathan Brooks, some of these other guys where I'm like actually like psyched to take them. You know, they create this pocket where I don't want to be taking them wide receivers. But as we come out of this group is kind of drying up. We're getting to Raheem Mostert, kind of coming off is like one of the last guys there. You get to Benson, you get to Javonte, you get to Brian Robinson, and at that same time, we're starting to look at the wide receivers kind of poking through the clouds again with Lockett, Mike Williams, and you know, you talked about you're not really taking those guys, but I like Courtland Sutton might be the clear-cut wide receiver 1, like big-time target share on a team that's actually operating under Sean Payton like he wants. Like, I mean, late stage of his career, Drew Brees, you know, would we take his Courtland Sutton higher than this? Like, for sure, right? Like, no question. Yeah. It's really like a fairly low bar, I think, that we're asking him of Bo Nix for this Sutton type of pick. I know it's not exciting, but I actually I wonder if these guys are, you know, one of the ways where we can like work to attack some of these value, like where I'm taking 2 detours or 3 detours through like 6 rounds or something. Yeah. These guys, I think, have some utility.
The 2 that are probably the best of this group to me, I think, are Sutton and Lockett, because I think that they have like no routes questions. Like you know they're running. Maybe Lockett, I guess, has some routes questions.
He has some,
Like dusts him, but I still think they'll probably just run 11 personnel most of the time anyway. Sutton has 0 routes questions, and you know they might not be great, but we know they're not terrible unless they just like fall off a cliff. But barring like age-related decline, we know they have a certain level of talent. So I think that they're fine. There's some in here that I think are really highly questionable, where like we don't really know routes and we don't really know talent, and they're not a rookie. Like I think Shakir is like a particularly bad bet.
So I like Shakir a fair amount. Yeah, what give me the Shakir, or no, sorry, not Shakir, Shaheed. I don't mind.
Shaheed I also think is a really bad bet. I think both of the shots are like off my board.
Shakir's whatever. Like I don't have strong feelings about Shakir. Like if you have Allen, I'll try to mix in Shakir, but I don't really care that much about Shakir. I think Samuel's pretty good.
Yeah, Samuel is fine, and I don't really like Curtis Samuel in a vacuum, but I've been thinking about it. I'm like, do I like Young Coleman at cost? Absolutely not. Do I like Khalil Shakir at cost? Absolutely not. Do I like Dalton Kincaid at cost? It's okay for me. And then I'm like, do I think Josh Allen's going to suck this year? And I'm like, well, no.
Nope.
And I'm like, well, I have to bet on somebody. So who's going to catch the passes then, Jacob? And I'm like, I think probably Curtis Samuel's the guy that I'm like, I can't be like sub 8% on like every bill unless I just think the offense is going to fail, and I don't. So I think probably Curtis Samuel is a better pick than I'm giving him credit for.
Yeah. No. Okay. So I agree. I have like Samuel rated ADP, and I take him, especially if I have Allen. I'll take him.
If I take Allen, for sure.
Yeah. The problem is that when you sometimes like if you get too far behind, then you're like, do I take Curtis Samuel like over Jonathan Brooks? Basically pick your favorite running back in that range, and now you're like, do I take Curtis Samuel over him as my wide receiver 4? That's pretty horrendous, but
that's part of my issue though, is I actually like that second grouping of running backs like a lot, or at least 3 of them I like a lot. Benson, 1, and then the 2 that other people probably just don't like as much as me. I still really like Javonte at cost.
I like Javonte too.
Maybe not as in
give me the Javonte case. I've been hearing a lot of Javonte negativity lately.
Yeah, it's out there for sure. So I don't really. That's why I kind of went with the upward inflection, where I was like, I like Javonte. The case for Javonte is, you know, think back to last year. Everybody is talking about it's impossible for any running back to be good first year off a torn ACL. You can't draft Breece Hall even in the 5th round. Dalvin Cook is obviously going to be the starter. You know, you're a total idiot if you draft a running back with a torn ACL.
The Dalvin Cook is the clear starter crowd has been awfully quiet.
Yeah, absolutely. and then Breece Hall does what he does. And now it feels like, we now live in like kind of a post ACL society where it's like, oh, like Jonathan Brooks, like November ACL, so that's fine. Like we should take him. And hi, it's me on that. I think we should take Jonathan Brooks.
I did too. I tried to be cool after he went to the Panthers. Like, he should fall a little bit. We need a discount. And then when I realized we weren't getting it, I was like, I don't care. I'm in.
And then with Javonte, everybody's like, oh, like inefficient, like what a bum. And I guess my take is like the point last year wasn't like actually drafting running backs off ACLs is good. The point was like, we just don't know. Right.
Well, to me, I think it's also the point is these are different injuries, clean ACL tear.
Yeah.
No, a second surgery to go like do like meniscus cleanup or whatever. Like single surgery, clean ACL tear is a different injury than multi-ligament tear. And if you have concerns or questions about like which is which and what the timelines are, there's like numerous really, really good injury experts that have this information. Like I'm just like repeating things that I heard from these guys. I would, in a new situation, go talk to those guys. I had Matthew Betts on the pod talking through some of these injuries like Nick Chubb and stuff. Edwin Porras is really great. Like go get the information from people who know what they're talking about. That's kind of the crazy thing to me about the last year is that everyone was like, these injuries are the same. And then there was like all these like medical informed dudes who were like, they're not. they are not the same.
Yeah. I agree with that. So point being, I just kind of am more willing to give Javonte, like I don't really want to hold his inefficiency off of the multi-ligament tear totally against it. Like all of last year, we were like, he's probably going to be bad. He had a multi-ligament tear. And it's like, yeah, he was. But I think it'd then be kind of hypocritical to come back and be like, and because of that, he is now an inefficient player for life. Like I just,
right. That's how I feel.
If we're already talking about it as a 2-year injury, let's let it be a 2-year injury. So what's with the rest of the profile? I mean, I think I see the like treatment of him is pretty bullish. I've seen people being like, oh, I don't know if Sean Payton likes him. I mean, maybe I can't get inside of Sean Payton's head, but what we do know is Payton walks into the situation with Javonte coming off of an ACL, off of a multi-ligament tear, has no duty to him. He's coming in new regime, and he signs Pirine. They bring in McLaughlin as a UDFA, and what does he end up doing? He gives Javonte a pretty inefficient version of Javonte, like over 260 touches, and then this year, all they added is like a UDFA and a 5th-round pick, and they might cut Pirine. I mean, Benjamin Albright yesterday was tweeting like he thinks Pirine ultimately will be cut after they see what they have in camp. So to me, that's pretty bullish on Javonte. And then this whole offensive environment is really what I want to be targeting from the running backs, right? Like it's the Sean Payton has always really high running back expected fantasy points. Even last year when they were just a totally non-functional offense, Williams, Pirine, and McLaughlin, I believe, were all in the top 10 in yards per route run among running backs.
Pirine led all running backs.
High target rate. Yeah. So it's like, it was really like just this whole environment was really friendly for anybody. And you look at the players in this backfield, like Javonte is the only one that you can really see, kind of getting a mix into both roles, right? McLaughlin's like 180 pounds. He's not going to be a goal line back. He's going to be sort of, I don't even know if he can be a passing down back because of pass protection concerns, but he's more of like a specialized back, I think, where he's going to get, some schemed usage in the passing game. I think he's an interesting player. Estime is just kind of a clear bruiser. I don't know if Blake Watson makes a team. If he does, he's probably a passing down back. But Javonte is the guy who can do a little bit of everything. And, you're getting this workhorse profile potentially in this really positive environment. And it's a prospect we all liked, right? Like his prospect wasn't without holes, but he had really, really high force missed tackle rates, always drawn targets at a strong rate as an early down player. Going back to North Carolina, he did it the same as his rookie year in Denver when he was splitting time with Melvin Gordon. He did it the same out of the gate in year 2. And then he comes into this environment now going into year 4, where I think a lot is really nicely set up around him. So I think there's an opportunity for this to be a talent-based bet, fused with a situation-based bet. I like him. And then Brian Robinson's the other guy that I really like in this tier, which is another one that
thank you, man. I think you're the only one. No, not to me. This is an easy sell to me, but I've not heard a single person say nice things about Brian Robinson. And so I just, please go ahead. Tell us about Brian Robinson. Why he's going outside the top 100.
He's good. That's the thing. People think he's bad, but he's not.
He's
not
good.
Explosive, but he's good. His success rates are consistently high. His like PFF rush grades, which is basically how well are you understanding the assignment grade, are consistently high. When you just watch him play, like he is a bulldozer who can consistently get you the yards that you need to get. And when you look at what Cliff Kingsbury does with his offense historically, it's just really, really high running back touch rates at the goal line. And I think it's just like abundantly clear that Brian Robinson is the goal line back over Austin Eckler. I would be stunned if that was not the case. And so you're getting Brian Robinson, who is just a very superior rusher to Austin Eckler, who's going to have goal line opportunities. And yeah, like why can't he have 250 carries and 12 touchdowns? And I've heard people have concerns about the pass game usage and Eckler coming in. He didn't really have pass game. He didn't have pass down work last year either. Antonio Gibson played all of those snaps. Brian Robinson had some screen passes that he broke off on early downs. But like you look at his charts and it was like, he'd run like 8 routes in some of these games where Antonio Gibson is running all the routes. And it's like, sure, maybe he'd have the screen pass upside. That's still going to be there. Like he's still going to, I think, play functionally the same role. Eckler is probably going to play more of the Gibson role. And there's nobody else there. If Eckler is just totally washed or he goes down, maybe Brian Robinson's role expands. But I think you're getting just the base setting of an effective running back in a really positive rushing environment who's going to score a gazillion touchdowns.
It's a great point about the routes. Like in week 18, he had 8 routes, 3 targets. So, he's kind of like, he's an early death, like, screens, you're kind of hoping he gets used on a bunch of screens. He's not going to be out there like as a pure passing down guy. If they're in like the 2-minute drill, no huddle type situation, that'll be Agholor, I'm sure. But he did have 40 targets last year. He's not a 0 there. And then, probably is on more like the schemed early down stuff, but he's going to be out there on the early downs you would expect. Right. He also, the thing about the explosiveness, he is not a particularly explosive back, but he gets kind of painted as this like ultra plotter. And he had 1.68 yards per route run last year. That's driven off of a couple like really big plays that he had as a receiver. Mm-hmm. But I thought this guy wasn't allowed to have big plays. So you're taking away his yards per route run as like doesn't tell us anything. But then it's like also he can't possibly ever break off a big play as a runner. Like it's a weird thing where if he just like never caught those passes and they were swing, if they were, pitches and he does the same thing. I think we think about Brian Robinson a little differently because we're like, oh my God, this guy actually has more explosiveness as a rusher. All the rushing numbers are juiced by those plays instead of the receiving numbers. And because we think of him as a rusher, we're like, oh, he's way better than I realized. So it's like this hidden efficiency to his profile that I think is actually pretty solid. And then when you look at, what his actual efficiency was as a rusher, it's fine. He's not blowing anyone away, but he had 82 rush yards over expected last year, which was above, Jahmyr Gibbs, above David Montgomery, just above Najee Harris, right behind Derrick Henry, Isaiah Pacheco. He was like, it was fine. 38% success rate wasn't amazing. He was better than that in 2022. But I don't know. To me, he's just one of these guys that goes ahead of him. But you're getting a quarterback upgrade that should be, you could argue if it's an upgrade overall. I think it's an upgrade specifically for opening up lanes for an early down runner. Right? Like Jaden Daniels should help.
It's an upgrade overall. Sam Howell sucks.
Well, I didn't want to start the Sam Howell wars again, but yeah, I agree. It's an upgrade. But hang on. I think I read Bijan's numbers instead of Brian Robinson's numbers. Disinformation. 38. So those are Bijan's. Brian Robinson wasn't that far behind though. He had 38 rush yards over expected, tied with Khalil Herbert. And he had a 41% success rate. So he was more consistent, less explosive, more consistent.
That fits more my idea of Brian Robinson. A little more.
I know.
A little more success rate, a little less than that. This expected.
Exactly.
But I mean, the way I'd pitch it is like you mentioned the 40 targets, right? Again, people think like Agholor is coming for his target share. He got those 40 targets while never running long down and distance 2-minute drill snaps anyways.
Anyway, yeah, Antonio Gibson was the
Agholor is taking the role. Agholor is just taking the Gibson role that Robinson never had. It should be a selling point that he had 40 targets in spite of the role that he didn't have and will still not have. Like, there's no reason why he can't just still have those targets.
In this role, he had 40 targets, yeah.
Right, like last year at the end of the season, everybody was like, oh, man, kind of weird that we let Brian Robinson go in the 10th. Like, what a great pick. What are we going to do next year? Oh, let's leave him
11th. No, he's dropping. He's cheaper.
Right? Like, he was like a clearly good pick at the same price, at the same role. Gets an offensive upgrade and an offensive coordinator upgrade, like for him specifically. Like, Cliff Kingsbury is not a good offensive coordinator, but he will get running backs touchdowns. That he will absolutely do. And if people are worried about Jaden Daniels stealing touchdowns, I wouldn't be that worried. Like, Jaden Daniels is going to run a lot between the 20s. I don't think he's going to be a massive goal line threat. He's very small. And Cliff Kingsbury, had Kyler Murray, who I think is a better goal line rushing quarterback, also a little undersized than Daniels. And it never stopped them from getting all the touchdowns of the world for guys like Kenyon Drake and James Conner. I mean, James Conner, like, is kind of a Brian Robinson type guy too, where it's like he's a consistent, not super fast running back that I think people mistakenly call bad, but he's not bad. He's just not fast. And I think Robinson can do some of the similar stuff.
I think he's around underpriced. Like, it's wild to me that he goes where he goes. And I think, him and Javonte they're both good, really good picks, but Robinson, I think
I've
even
ranked
better.
At 98, Brian Robinson.
Yeah. I would have him at 101, but I have him at 107 because, it's like, don't take, because otherwise you're just taking Brian Robinson in every draft. His ADP is 112.
So I toyed back and forth with this. I was like, should I do like ranks that are like market based, or should I do ranks that are just like how I feel? And I decided like I was just going to do actually how I think these players should go ranks. And the reason for that is I don't think anyone should just draft off of rankings. So I wanted to make my rankings so impossible to draft off of that no one would do it.
This is the Siegel approach. Yeah.
Like I wanted it to be like patently absurd to draft off my rankings so that people wouldn't try. I wanted them to be like a way to communicate my thoughts on the players, and then you can fucking figure out how to draft. It was my idea.
Yeah, our rankings are uploadable, and you can draft off them. That's the idea. But there are different exercises. I mean, that is the thing of like, you have to ask people like, what were you trying to accomplish here with these rankings? Because it's not clear that it's you upload them and draft them.
I wrote this whole intro into the debut of the rankings, and basically I was like, I really don't like rankings. They're not very worthwhile. It's like you should draft dynamically. You should draft based on your team. Like I really hate rankings. Anyway, here they are. Here's how I would use them. But it's. Yeah, my issue with like drafting off of rankings is it's just kind of impossible. Like you're drafting based on correlation, you're drafting based on structure, you're drafting based on watching what your opponents are doing, how you think the economy of the draft is going, who you think is going to get back to you. Like I've never even uploaded rankings, my own or anyone else's, into Underdog when I draft. I exclusively just draft with the ADP on because I want to be feeling the room out. So to me, rankings is more of like the biggest value add to me of rankings is sometimes we get locked into this ADP paralysis where it's like, because we are forced to stare at the ADP so often, we start to think that it's right.
This is what this guy's value is.
Whereas like, it's kind of freeing when I do a ranking. I'm just trying to force myself into the exercise of like, how do I actually feel about this player? And then I'm like, no, I wouldn't take this player who goes in round 2 until the like 5th. And then it's like, oh, okay, that's how I feel about Kyren Williams. But
where are you at on Michael Pittman? Because this is the guy who goes in round 3 that I think is a 5th round pick. And I know you're a Colts fan, so
I'm fine with Michael Pittman. But most of that is because I really like Anthony Richardson. And so I want to stack him with several different options. Like I want to make Anthony Richardson one of the core parts of my portfolio. I think he's going to be the QB1 overall this year. And so I want to have him on like 20% of my teams. Pittman, I think, is fine. He's I don't think he's a great fit with Richardson is the main problem. I think he's like a target eater. And he works best as an underneath player and sort of an intermediate player, which was good with Minshew, who doesn't throw deep and doesn't know how to read a progression. So all he had to do is like fake option handoff. Where's Mike? Throw it.
Where's Mike? Yeah.
that was the offense. Like poor Alec Pierce was just like out there running backside digs for no fucking reason. Like the entire season, just doing cardio. And like was honestly like, I don't want to come off like an Alec Pierce truther, but like the amount of times per game that Alec Pierce would just be like wide open with the defense that knew Minshew was never getting to the backside was like frequent. Like, and he wasn't wide open because he's good. He was wide open because the defense didn't deem him worthy of
covering half the field.
Yeah, it was just like, he's not going there.
They covered the Minshew half of the field.
Right. So with Richardson, I think he's going to be taking more shots. He's going to be scrambling. The one nice thing with Richardson is you don't get the double fields effect. You don't. He's not going to take sacks. So he's going to eat up a lot of dropbacks with scrambles, but he's not going to take sacks. So you will get a higher route to target conversion. I just think there's other ways I kind of prefer playing the Colts. Like I don't think Pittman can hit if Richardson's bad. And if Richardson's good, I think that with the infrastructure they have, the skill players, Shane Steichen, the pace of play, I think this offense hits in a really massive way. And if it does, I just kind of want to bet on the other players who I think are really cheap, who are also interesting. Like Downs is just certified good at football.
He's good
and doesn't cost you anything. And it's weird. We have like he's like a young wide receiver who's good in an environment that is all about drafting young wide receivers really highly.
With a quarterback going in the 5th round.
At all.
It's crazy.
I mean, I'm a homer, but I think most people think this offense is going to be good. I mean, we're drafting Taylor at the 1-2 turn. We're drafting Pittman at the 3-4 turn. We're drafting Richardson in the 5th. The market is like, we think the Colts are going to be good. The market is saying we really want to draft wide receivers. The market is saying we really want to draft young wide receivers. We don't give a crap about Josh Downs. I don't get it. He's good.
He was a good prospect. He was productive. He was an early declare. He comes in. He's good right away. Yeah. He's got no competition for what he does. Like he's their clear slot receiver.
He's going to be the slot receiver.
Yeah. So I just like he's going to be out there. And then if you think he's good, like, and then to me, I mean, maybe this is the part where I do diverge from the market, but I'm like, what is the target competition really? Like Michael Pittman he's one of these guys who gets like anointed. Like you are the target. You get all the targets. You're like our guy who's, our trustworthy wide receiver one. It's like, yeah. And he's the best that you've got, and that's great. I understand why you're doing this, but like, he's never really impressed. Like at any point in his career, he's always been like pretty solid, but he strikes me as someone who you're much better off if Pittman's like your number 2, like kind of like a possession receiver number 2. And you've got like a legit number 1 who's like, actually drawing some defensive coverage, adding some big plays to the mix.
Yeah.
Like, is he better than T. Higgins?
Johnson with better PR in the sense that like he doesn't really add anything after the catch. He's not really much of a deep threat. Like what he's good at is like earning targets. He's better hands than Deontay Johnson.
I don't think he's even like Deontay Johnson level at earning targets, but I've said Drake London is Michael Pittman with a better publicist. But that slander is going to really hurt me this year when Drake London breaks out. I'm taking Drake London at the 1-2 turn.
I don't want to hear that. I don't think it's necessarily wrong, but I don't want to hear it. I like Drake London.
No, I like him too.
Drake London is for sure like a player. I'll just freely admit, like I loved him as a prospect. His rookie year confirmed everything that I loved about him as a prospect. His second year was kind of bad, and I just kind of am choosing to ignore it because I would rather care about my priors.
And you know what? But I think it's fine with Drake London because like Drake London, it's like Darnell Mooney, Rondale Moore. We have a pocket passer quarterback who operates at high volume. And and his main competition for targets is a deep threat tight end. Like if Michael Pittman was in Atlanta, I don't think I'd be taking him at the 1-2 turn, but like, the 2-3 turn. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. But like now we've got, some concerns about the offensive volume. And I'm like, to me, it just comes down to like, are we sure that he is actually better than Josh Downs in his second season? Right. And Josh Downs if Josh Downs takes any kind of leap in his second season, which happens all the time, are we 100% sure that he's actually better at earning targets than this dude? And I'm not.
I'm sure he's going to run more routes than Josh Downs. I'm not necessarily sure that he's be better per route.
Right, per route. Who's
Mitchell
actually better at earning targets?
I'm also in on Mitchell. I mean, I didn't really like Mitchell that much as a prospect, but I feel like we're getting a lot of that baked in, right? Like all of the guys that we were discussing, and part of that's just draft capital slide, and I guess some of it's landing spot. But you go back to like pre-draft, the conversation was, do you like Mitchell or Worthy? Do you like Mitchell or McConkey? Do you like Mitchell or Coleman? It's like he's now going, 4 or 5 rounds behind all these other guys. So you're getting the discount that you wanted on Mitchell. He's to me the best stylistic fit with Anthony Richardson, right?
I agree.
He's the best deep threat on the team. He's going to be a guy who's going to be a major priority in the end zone. He's also a guy, if you just think of how this offense hits, it's going to be, not that projectable necessarily, because there's going to be games where Richardson only has 25 pass attempts because he runs 12 times. And, Steichen, I think, is a really good coach in that he will shift from like very pass heavy to very run heavy game plans, depending on the opponent and game flow. Like he's kind of hard to pin down in the sense, like there's been games where they get an opponent that has a much better pass defense. Or a much better run defense, and they'll line up and throw it 40 times to go quick game. There's been times where it's just the middle of the game. Like there'd be like Pittsburgh game was a good example last year, where it was like the third quarter and they weren't really passing that well. They were gashing them, and he was just like, we're going to call 13 consecutive run plays like until you stop it. And they didn't. Like that's just kind of how he'll coach. He'll really lean into what's working. So I think it's going to be hard to project them from a weekly basis. But if Mitchell's the guy where like, it could be 4 targets, but one of them's a 50-yard touchdown. So he gets there that week. And, other weeks where it's more high octane, they have to throw more, he can kind of get his target share. And I do think there's talent upside there. For anyone who's like a reception perception head, this is like the reception perception receiving core. Like Pittman has always been beloved by reception perception. Josh Downs, shout out Josh Downs, 93rd percentile success rate versus man coverage as a rookie.
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
gets open.
Good at football. And then Mitchell was like a really, underdrafted prospect if you lean into the reception perception data. So, I mean, part of this is
Mitchell, we know it's Mitchell's ability on the field when he's putting it all together is never, that's not why he went where he went.
Right.
If he would be in the first round and probably with much better efficiency numbers in college. If that was consistently happening. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just want to draft this offense. I'm not usually a homer. Like the Colts have been bad for most of the time that I've been doing best ball. I don't usually draft a shit ton of Colts. This is the most excited I've ever been about a Colts team since Andrew Luck retired. I don't know if they're going to be good because our secondary is horrible, but that's just another reason to draft the offense.
Yeah.
like think about this division. All the teams are very fun and all of their offenses are better than their defenses.
So I've been a little greedy with AD Mitchell where I want him to fall further. And I think he will. I think you're going to get the Alec Pierce is running with the ones. I think you're going to get the Alec Pierce is a starter. AD Mitchell's not a starter. He's not even a starter. And then we're going to get we're going to have to do the thing where we're like, yeah, no, he's not a starter because he's a rookie. And then he's going to be a starter later. Like this is how this works. But we're going to have to fight that battle. And I want to fight that battle at like 130 and not like 115.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. My attitude for him now is I only take him in Richardson teams. Because like there, I'm not really that concerned about whether I'll get him cheaper later. Like I'll just take him at ADP on a Richardson team.
That makes sense.
If I don't have Richardson, then I usually don't take him.
But he's going 20 picks ahead of Downs. Like I think I like Downs better.
Yeah. I mean, I probably like Mitchell slightly more in a vacuum because I just think he's going to probably run more routes at the end of the day.
And late season spike week upside.
As a late season spike week upside, he has like the profile that we want. But I mean, again, I told you guys, I just do pure ranks, right? I'm not doing the.
Well, this is a spot where the ADP is
pure ranks. I have Josh Downs at 107 and I have Mitchell at 106. So that's like how I actually feel about them. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah. I would if you made me so my thing with Josh Downs is like if you told me if you want any Josh Downs, you got to take him at like pick 100. I would take Josh Downs. I wouldn't really be that concerned about it.
That's my tweet from like last May where I was like, if I had to, I would take Nico Collins in the 8th. That's how I feel about Josh Downs this year. If I had to, I would take Josh Downs in the 8th.
Yeah. All right. Josh Downs this year, Nico Collins. You heard it here first.
Yeah, we just went from a big, large athletic man to a small man.
He plays like a big man, though. That's part of the appeal.
He does. Yeah.
So, all right. Why do you not like Shaheed? This is one that I'm kind of into Shaheed. I think this offseason was sort of sneaky nice for him because you lose Michael Thomas, what he was doing. They didn't replace him with like anybody. A.T. Perry didn't do anything. He had like a sub 1 yards per route run. Yeah. Juwan Johnson, I think, is a pretty good pick for some of the same reasons where like some stuff cleared out. Jimmy Graham retired and everything. So you're getting like a little bit more kind of the concentration in the offense is probably really going to run through those three guys, I think. But Shaheed has been efficient throughout his career now, 1.95 career yards per route run. And yeah, he doesn't like run routes like, you know, he's not like a 90% route guy, but he had 71% route participation last season. And, you know, that's with a 33% thrown in there. I'm not sure if he got hurt in that game or what, but most of the time he's like 77%, 81%. You know, there was a 93% at his peak. You know, he runs like I mean, if we're into Josh Downs, right? Like Josh Downs is what his route participation probably be 75% or something like that. So to me, I'm like, you're getting, he's not like, he's probably running he's going to have route participation in line with like a slot receiver, but he's going to be mostly an outside deep threat, kind of rotating off the field sometimes. And I don't know, I think he's pretty good. And then you get the offensive coordinator change. We're going to a Kubiak offense now. Maybe this is like a little bit more, you know, modern. Mm-hmm. And, you know, some of the play action stuff to Rashid Shaheed, where you know he's throwing cars going deep, he's going to Olave. Oh no, Shaheed! You know, I think we're gonna get some of that.
Yeah, I like Shaheed more than Shakir. I'm talking about the two shots.
Okay.
So I don't know if when we're talking pre-show, I think I said Shakir. I don't know if you meant Shaheed. Maybe.
Okay. I was like real bummed out that you didn't like Shaheed, but it was Shakir. I don't care about Shakir.
But it's actually Shakir I don't like.
Okay.
But I do feel actually somewhat similar about the two shots beyond their name, which is just they're both like kind of unheralded players who haven't run full route shares, and their efficiency has been interesting, but their target earning is not as interesting. Like Shaheed last year, 71% route share, 16.4 targets per route run is like okay. The efficiency is better.
14.68 dot. He's a deep threat, so he's not going to earn targets as frequently.
Yeah. So I don't know. I can get Marvin Mims later. That's kind of how I feel about
Marvin Mims might not be playing, man.
I mean, but isn't it kind of similar? It's like a guy who doesn't really earn a lot of targets, but runs a lot of deep routes that he's efficient on them. Like
if you tell me for sure Marvin Mims is running a lot of deep routes, I will draft a ton of them. If I don't know that he's actually
deep routes,
Troy Franklin.
Name a Broncos wide receiver on the team outside of Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, and Courtland Sutton.
Josh Reynolds.
Oh yeah, that guy.
I learned names. Sean Payton taught me names. He taught me names of people that he was willing to play
Brandon Johnson.
Yeah,
the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, was like out there running 70%.
Wouldn't he play Little Jordan Humphrey ahead of him? I mean, like Sean Payton's ready to teach us names of guys who will play over Marvin Mims.
That's true, but he's just dying to break out.
I listen. I'm mixing in Mims. I'm just not. I just know what I'm getting myself into.
Yeah, the Sean Payton gaslighting of like I don't know how to get Marvin Mims on the field. He's like gonna break out any day now, and then he's like, I'm gonna play like fake AI generated wide receivers.
Yeah, he's playing creative players over him.
I love that he's like, I'm Sean Payton, I'm an offensive genius. Then he's like, look, he can only play the Jerry Jeudy role, and we had Jerry Jeudy. What was I supposed to do? I couldn't get him on the field. It was just like, really.
Speaking of Jerry Jeudy, are you into Jeudy at all? He's in this range.
But, I'd like you to follow up with my lawyer, but yeah, I'm taking him.
You are taking him. Okay.
Yeah.
No,
I don't feel good about it.
I don't want to talk about it either, but I am taking him. Not like a ton.
But I'm also because I mean, like it's not like a fun subject to talk about on the podcast, but like his quarterback's just underpriced.
He is underpriced. We're quietly all in agreement with that. It's no fun. The thing about these guys, though, if we want to zoom out, because I think what about Josh Palmer? Do you think he's like just the worst projection space guy ever?
I mean, no,
because I think he's kind of fine. I think he's a totally fine.
He is fine. Like he's like he's basically Courtland Sutton if Sutton never had the one really good season.
That's true. I don't know what that means though.
Like, it just means he's like an okay, like he's like competent enough he's a professional wide receiver.
Yeah.
Which like isn't that interesting.
Is Josh Palmer just like Nelson Agholor?
I think he's a little better than Nelson Agholor.
Okay.
Like maybe he's like pre-ACL Gallup.
That's pretty good.
Not
pre-ACL Gallup.
Gallup. That was like a weird aberration. Maybe he's like third. I don't know. But all these guys, right? Like a lot of them just have kind of random years where they're better than they are.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I think Palmer's a fine enough pick. I also really like Herbert.
Yeah, me too.
I'm kind of willing to eat up this Chargers FUD. Like I don't think that it's wrong, but I think that it's like absurdly priced in.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess at this point, I think it probably is very priced in. I'm both concerned about the offense, the direction of the offense. Greg Roman being like just a bad offensive coordinator. Like, come on,
he's bad.
Like, he's bad. Like all the ideas, is like these ideas that like the NFL like completely knows about. Like, I mean, come on. But Herbert's going at 127 now, so I'm in.
Yeah, like, don't you think that there's like one of the things that we write about in January is like, man, remember when we took Justin Herbert as the quarterback 17? That was really stupid. Like, that just seems pretty easy to be like, oh, we took like one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league, 17th, because we were like really afraid of this new offense. Like, is the Chargers defense going to be good? I don't know why it would be.
Probably not.
Do they have good players on it? Like, they have a couple.
Yeah.
They weren't good last year. They didn't add anybody. I just, because that's the thing. Like, even if they want to run the ball in the first half, I think they're going to find themselves, because I also don't think that will work. Like, I don't think that an offense of like, we have Justin Herbert as our quarterback, but instead we choose to run the offense through Gus Edwards. It's so patently absurd that either it won't work or it's not what they're planning to do. And then if it doesn't work, then they're behind and then they have to throw. And that, you know, oftentimes I see people be like, oh, you know, garbage time is actually not very valuable. Like, what you really want is efficiency. And so if you're betting on passing volume to come be garbage time, historically it produces less fantasy points per attempt. My counter to that is usually that's because teams get into garbage time because they're already bad. So it's like, I don't really want Bryce Young's garbage time. But like,
you kind of do, because that was his only good game, was in garbage time.
True. As opposed to the other 16 garbage time games, which were bad.
Those are not good.
But like, we've seen at times whenever you get this weird setup of like, there's a quarterback who's just clearly overqualified for the offense the team wants to run. I think back to like Kirk Cousins in the first Stefanski offense. I think Russell Wilson and some of those Pete Carroll offenses, which maybe in hindsight he wasn't overqualified for, but he produced like he was. Like, where you really would be like, oh man, like if we can just fall behind this game, like I actually think this quarterback is good enough to, like, if forced, start really stringing it together. And with Herbert, I feel that way. I could just see there being, maybe there are some weeks where they do what they want to do and they win gross. But I see weeks where they fall behind and he has to throw 40 times, even if they don't want to. And it's like 35 fantasy points because he's Justin Herbert. And in his price range, that's fine. You don't even need him to be 13 weeks counting. You can get him as your QB2, you know, or if he's your QB1, you can easily add 2 other quarterbacks.
I haven't heard that kind of like peak Russell Wilson comp to what we could expect from Herbert. That's pretty interesting. Of, you know, they're rolling him out, and, you know, it is a run heavy offense, but like Herbert's, maybe it unlocks some of the deep stuff that we know Herbert has the arm for, but
yeah,
it hasn't always been there. You know, we're getting instead a lot of like Herbert checkdowns all the time. So maybe we're trading some Herbert checkdowns for a little bit more explosiveness off of, you know, play action in a run heavy scheme. I mean, either way. I just think, I don't know. It has gotten to the point where I don't know how, but it's Justin Herbert, so I'm going to take him. If you're going to, you know, you just took like Tua, and so now I'm going to take Herbert. Like that's how this is going to go.
I'm not drafting Jared Goff over Justin Herbert. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. I'm not either.
But,
I'm not either.
But yeah, Palmer, it's fine. I don't take him outside of Herbert stacks, but I'll also I will take him sometimes because, I mean, I'm going to draft 45% Drake Maye. So I I have no choice but to be in on the Chargers.
Okay, so the Drake. I was actually hoping to zoom us out, but let's talk Maye because we have to talk Maye because I mean I'm going to have 45%.
I'm gonna pull up my Patriots exposures right now, and they're as a person who like grew up as a Colts fan and was like consistently traumatized by the New England Patriots. It's not fun that this is now my life, but I'm gonna click on Patriots. I've drafted 38% Jalen Polk, 38% Demario Douglas, 33% Drake Maye, 26% Javon Baker, 23% Antonio Gibson, and 19% Hunter Henry.
That's amazing. My stuff's like so much of it is not done yet. Let me see.
I have about half my slow puppies done, and about half of them still in the oven. But,
all right, so I've got
will reduce my Drake Maye exposure.
I've got 28% Jalen Polk, 28% Drake Maye, 25% Demario Douglas, 17% Antonio Gibson, 14% Javon Baker, 10% Hunter Henry, only 3% Ramondre, 3% Kendrick Bourne.
I haven't really been drafting much Ramondre. Oh, okay, Sam.
He was good. He was good before the ACL. What if he comes back and he's good at the end of the year?
Hey, Brees Hall did it. Why not Kendrick Bourne?
Why not Kendrick Bourne? What's the difference, really? Yeah, I got to mix them in occasionally. Jalen Polk, because we talk about Drake Maye as like, this awesome prospect. Both of us were much more into in Dynasty than the market. And just like really strongly feeling like he's got this very fantasy friendly skill set that's just going underappreciated. But is he even the best target here? Because both of us read Jalen Polk first. Stu is a second round wide receiver. We just talked about how thirsty the market is for these receivers. Like all these other second round, Keon Coleman's going in the 6th round. You can get Jalen Polk in the 14th round or whatever. So like you're getting access. And look, I didn't love Polk's profile. But I think my thing with Polk, and I was at first pretty annoyed that they took Polk because I was like, all right, Drake Maye the Patriots, but at least get him someone fun and explosive. And then they got Jalen Polk.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on. But I have to say, Polk is, I think, a professional wide receiver, or at least like if he hits, it's because he does the stuff you want wide receivers to do. It's not a very fun kind of long-term pairing. Like if he hits his upside and like even a guy like Ladd McConkey hits his upside, like I'd much rather have Ladd on this team. Basically any of these guys, like A.D. Mitchell hits his upside. Oh my God, he could have been with Drake Maye. That would be so fun.
Right.
But Polk at this price, he's 153 in Best Ball Mania. I think he's at least around underpriced. He opens up the Drake Maye backdoor stack. It pairs well with the Chargers stuff. If you have Herbert, who we just talked about as a target. So we're already kind of in that game environment. And it's just like a lot of these guys down here were like, okay, we have real questions about the talent, with the Leggett, and then the offensive quality. No. And then you talk about like Lindsey Pearsall. Yeah, I think Leggett too, but like, I don't know if it's going to work, and then Pearsall
won't work.
Right. Pearsall is even getting on the field this year. And then and then you start to get to guys who don't have the draft capital. Polk is going to get on the field. There's no question.
For sure.
You have the draft capital. And I think the offense, like, I don't think they're going to be good, but they're going to throw. They're going to have to throw. They're going to have to throw. And like Drake Maye, what if he doesn't play the whole season? That doesn't matter to Jalen Polk because they have Jacoby Brissett. He's actually good. Like Jalen Polk's going to have solid quarterback play the whole season. It's going to be sufficiently good to produce, for a wide receiver with no target competition, like at all. And if you think there's target competition, then draft Demario Douglas for free too.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like it's crazy. Like I highly doubt it works out as well because it was never as good of a bet as it wound up last year. But like the number one thing anyone could have done last year, and I was doing it, was like, hey, what if like the number 2 overall pick quarterback that like we all thought was good is actually good, and then the offense is good, and you just take Stroud and whoever, and like that hit massively. And I'm kind of stunned that we're
just gonna do it again.
That we're just gonna be like, oh, like the Patriots, Patriots suck. You can't take a Patriot. It's like, I don't know. Like, probably, I guess, but maybe not. I just don't. I don't understand their prices at all. Polk especially goes in such a fun area because, like, the 3 wide receivers I really like in Leggett, Wicks, and Downs are all gone by then. The last of like the running backs that I want to prioritize, which is usually Zeke and Dowdle, they're gone. So you're kind of into like, you know, from like Jerome Ford into Charbonnet, and even those guys are usually gone. And it's usually
Kendre Miller, like Tyler Algier's there.
Miller, Algier. It's like backups. It's Ray Davis. Yeah. So like, he's just like clearly the guy that always sticks out as the best pick on the board. And then he's always like, oh, like, you know, you're searching for a stack and you're like, well, I could always stack the Patriots. And then you just grab Jalen Polk, then you grab Hunter Henry the next round, and then you grab one of the other Baker Douglas, then you grab Maye, and all of a sudden you have a triple stack. And it's, you know, you mix in Gibson if you want to. It's just ready made for you. And I agree, he doesn't have any route concern. Like, I don't know. I'd take Baker too, but you know, maybe Baker sees the field not right away, or honestly, like maybe never. He's a round 4 pick. Right. But I don't think KJ Osborne and Kendrick Bourne are keeping Polk off the field for very long, if at all.
No. I mean, and is Kendrick Bourne even on the field? Right? He's coming off the torn ACL. Right, he might not be on the field week 1 or week 2. You know, like to me, I'm like, Kendrick Bourne showed some yards after catch stuff that was pretty interesting. And maybe by the end of the season, he's right. And, you know, maybe Drake Maye is crushing. And so I'm mixing him in like very late, but like,
just wait.
Yeah.
Wait till we get the Juju Smith-Schuster has been released. Kendrick Bourne has started on the pup list. You know, now we're talking about some non-news that people might react to.
I've been shocked by the market's like kind of willingness to price in things again and again and again that are clearly already should have been priced in. But the Juju Smith got released. We need to adjust these ADPs thing. I can't. I'm not going to be able to handle it. When Juju Smith gets released and like Jalen Polk jumps around, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, why would you were worried about Juju Smith-Schuster?
It's going to happen.
I know. You're right. You're right.
It's gonna happen because of the way that our industry works. Like, some person is gonna be like as soon as Juju gets released, there's gonna be like underdog underscore fantasy be like Juju Smith-Schuster has been released, and then like some slapdick is gonna post like Jalen Polk 3 rocket ship emojis, and then like everyone's gonna be like, oh my god, and then like some dude is gonna be like, oh, I guess Jalen Polk's getting clips today, so they're gonna like post like a clip of him making cool catches at Washington. Everybody's oh man, like I guess Jalen Polk is a good pick, and then he's gonna be going like 132.
Just know when that happens, I'm putting up an out of office message. I'm gone. The site, I'm just gonna. The site's gonna be down for a week. It makes no sense. I can't handle it.
Just like when we get whatever. Like it's like Keaton Mitchell is gonna be on the pup list when he's probably not playing until like November. But like when he's on the pup list, he's gonna fall 20 picks. It's like
yeah.
I mean, it was like the Isaiah Pacheco last year when he went on like the preseason pup list and he dropped like 2 rounds, and it's like we just can't handle it. All it is vibes-based drafting. It's just people like getting to a certain name and being like, or being like, like that's all it is.
That's true. That's true. You're right. Yeah, that's why it's gonna happen. Juju's gone.
Get us the Q tags. Oh Get us the Q tags.
I know.
Underdog.
Come on, underdog. The ADP on DraftKings is so fun and wild when those Q tags are on. It's crazy. So you want 9th round Dobbins? Here he is.
Turns out I didn't.
No, you didn't. But I still think it was the right process move.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So I'm glad. I'm both glad you're in on the Patriots, and then I kind of need like someone to talk some sense into me on the Patriots stuff because it's going to just be such a huge bet for me this year, and so far no one's been able to do it. Does
Ben like the Pats? Because I mean, Sam's obviously going to be eating them up because he loves.
Right. Sam is usually who you go to on this stuff, right? You need some negativity about fun players.
Negativity, but he's just like probably just like got his Drake.
No, he's a Pats fan. Like, yeah, he can't do it. Yeah. Right. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe I need to. I'm looking. If you hate the Pats, let me know.
I want you to talk bad
to talk some sense to me on Drake Maye.
No, I'm like perfectly comfortable just making my season like largely based on this bet, like just 30% of the 3 pass catchers in May, and maybe it won't work, but like they're so cheap that even if they're bad, the teams aren't even dead anyway.
Right. Right. I mean, like, I think you're getting the, like, what if this really good quarterback prospect who was talked in the same breath with Caleb Williams for much of last year, like, go back and listen to stuff about, like, who's going to be the number one quarterback.
Drake Maye.
I am too, man. Like, go back and listen to the things like that people were saying in November about this quarterback class and how it shook out. And it was Drake Maye and Caleb Williams are it's either Drake Maye in a tier right behind Caleb. Caleb's in his own tier, or they're like same tier. Some people had Drake Maye ahead. It wasn't until draft season where, the kind of the groupthink takes over and you're not allowed to think that anymore. But there were times where Drake Maye was the number one quarterback for some people in this class. So I think just getting him and all his weapons for free at the end of the draft seems like a pretty easy way to add upside to your builds. But, maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're wrong. Hopefully not. I will say, like, I think so. There's some stuff, if we zoom out, right? There's some stuff we like. There's Wicks as we're legally obligated as fantasy analysts to say we like Wicks. Jalen Polk. We like some of these other rookies, Pearsall, Leggett, they're pretty solid. But these are guys, I think you would agree, wide receiver 6, right? Wide receiver 7.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we go up to the previous group that we talked about, that kind of runs like through Downs and Judy, wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6, right? Yeah. If this group's your wide receiver 4, you're in some real trouble. And then, so that really, I think, kind of underlines of like, if you don't have 4 wide receivers before the group dries up, then you're in trouble. And the group dries up, I mean, probably before Rashee Rice, because he's going to get suspended. I like Rashee Rice, but I want him as my wide receiver 5, ideally, he's not going to be out there. So wide receiver 4 is tough for him. So it kind of dries up around like DeAndre Hopkins. And that's
you have to click DeAndre Hopkins, that's not fun.
which I do pretty frequently.
You're in on Hopkins?
Yeah, he was pretty good last year, and Ridley wasn't.
Okay.
And
this is encouraging. I want to be in on Hopkins because the numbers say that I should be in on Hopkins, and then I usually see him there, and I'm like, "Ew, gross." So if you're able to get past that, then I'm going to endeavor to get past that.
I don't understand why there's like zero enthusiasm about Hopkins, who was good last year on this team with this quarterback, and then he gets an offensive coordinator upgrade. Yeah. And, potentially a lot more passing volume, like a lot more. And this is one of these like Falcons. It's not quite the Falcons because no one's as crazy as Arthur Smith, but it's in that ballpark of like where we could be going from super duper ideologically run heavy to willing to pass and maybe willing to press it at points.
Yeah.
And then like, I don't know, dude, he was good. Like open score.
Yeah, he was.
Wide receiver 5. He was tied with Garrett Wilson in open score. Like the DeAndre Hopkins' wash narrative is like,
no, it doesn't exist.
I'm willing to be out on these dudes pretty quickly.
He's going to become washed, but there's no evidence that he's washed yet.
Exactly. He's about to turn 32. He could become washed at any point, at any second. Today, yesterday he wasn't washed. Today he is. That's possible. Yeah. I agree, but. The dude, he had 2.09 yards per route run last year playing with Will Levis, 5th in open score. They add Ridley, who was not good last year. He's the guy we should be worried about. We're taking Ridley, no problem, like a round ahead.
Right.
I just don't get it. Hopkins.
Yeah, I should actually get way more.
They should flip.
I should get way more in Hopkins. This I'm actually going to do because I really like Levis's price. I like the Tennessee offense generally. Like I'm really in on Spears, and I'm not out on Pollard. And I don't like Ridley's price really at all. So Hopkins should probably be the way to play that.
The Jamar, we're going to use him like Jamar Chase quote is carrying a lot of weight right now. Like they're talking about like what routes they're going to run. When you use someone like Jamar Chase, it doesn't give them Jamar Chase power. It's not like a Jamar Chase pill you take.
Give them the Jamar Chase route tree, and you go like, "You are now Jamar Chase."
Like I could run the Jamar Chase route tree too. It wouldn't work. Like the trick is to be Jamar Chase. That's the trick of the Jamar Chase role. That's just crazy to me. They're like, "Yeah, we might use him a little like Chase." It'd be like, 6th round pick after a terrible season with Will Levis. Like, what? Okay.
Speaking of, that's another. We didn't talk about them, but I'm very in on the Jaguars as well.
Me too. I'm in on Jaguars
the whole
too.
Way. Like, there was a lot of like luck regression. There was just a lot of like boneheaded play calling that I hope kind of regresses if Dougie takes back control. This offense just kind of makes more sense to me now. Whereas last year, a lot of the offense was like, we have to justify trading for Calvin Ridley. Whereas now, hopefully, the offense is like, we got 2 guys who run that way, and we got 2 guys who run this way. And like that's how it's gonna work.
Yeah, Cliff Kingsbury would love this offense. Just like, you guys mesh, you guys deep. Yeah. And we're doing a run play, by the way. This is all fake.
Yeah.
I'm very in on I started to realize I was probably a little too hot on Evan Ingram, because that was one of those ones where I was seeing it the same way you are, but I was like, also though, like maybe it doesn't work quite that perfectly, and the target competition for Brian Thomas hurts Ingram, and he's not like that good. So yeah. I kind of cooled off a little on him.
Kirk specifically,
though, but like, Kirk I'm in on.
Windmilling Kirk. I have. Let's see what the Kirk exposure is. It's like honestly kind of an unreasonable stand for like Christian Kirk of all people. We're at 31% Kirk. Most drafted player by the way.
I'm at 16. I thought I'd be higher. And I might be after these. I might be after my puppies finish up. But
the most drafted player, by the way, we didn't mention him. 56% Jalen Waddle.
Wow, that's I don't have any push. I'm not getting there myself, but he's a good pick. He's a good pick.
0.27 targets per route run, 2.63 yards per route run. It's like a top 5 to top 10 wide receiver talent profile in a good offensive environment with contingent upside on top. And we all talk about every round 2 pick is bad. I actually don't think Jalen Waddle is. If Jalen Waddle went to like pick 16, I would still be above the market. I think he's just like a straight up better pick than every single player in the second round after Gibbs and Taylor. I think he's a better wide receiver pick than London, Ayuk, Adams, Debo, all these guys. I don't think that it's that crazy because we kind of did that last year. And then he had a better targets per route run and a better yards per route run in 2023 than he had in 2022. He just sustained about 800 in-game injuries, and so we don't like him anymore. But I don't think the talent got worse.
And he's the number 2. He's the clear number 2 because I mean Tyreek's stuff is that much better. Like there is a big gap.
And it is that much better. And there is a big gap. But I would just say if you can put up 0.27 targets per run, 2.63 yards per run as a number 2, to me that speaks bullishly. Like that shows that you're able to be an alpha even as a number 2. And what if Tyreek Hill was to get hurt? Like now we're competing for wide receiver 1 overall, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like so this actually kind of reminds me of now I feel like you did with Hopkins, where I'm like, I want to be more bullish on Waddle now, because it's like I just didn't. Everything you're saying, I've kind of like thought about, and it's like, yeah, but he's a number 2, so I'm taking him. I have 26%, so I am pretty.
I'm not really recommending that everyone should draft 56% Jalen Waddle, but
so actually, I am pretty. I mean, it's funny. Like most people consider 26% a big stand.
It took me about 12 hours to go through every stage of grief on the at Cleveland week 17. Where like at first I was like, oh my God. And then I was like, you know what? We don't know anything anyway. And then I was like, maybe this will make their prices drop, but I can get even more. And then I just thought about the Breece Hall, David Njoku, Jerome Ford Thursday night game. And I was like, honestly, this is great. I don't see any
actually, this is good. This is actually what I wanted. Actually. I wanted this the whole time.
Yeah. You can build up the Alabama stack. You can take Waddle and Judy.
Yeah.
Reunite them.
Get Tua though. It's more fun. You'll feel better if you grab Tua.
We certainly feel better as a human.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, like that's the thing with Waddle. Like if you said Waddle's 16th, okay, that's fine. I would take him. Like and we don't. It's the same with London, right? Like London, like you got to take London 14th or 15th. Oh, right. Okay.
I don't like it.
I don't like it. You kind of like Marvin Harrison too. Like if you,
I don't like that.
But if you put Marvin Harrison at the 2-3 turn, I'm hammering him probably. But like at 13, like I just take him. I don't want to fade Marvin Harrison, so I'm not. But like maybe if Waddle was there, I'd be like, that's a little high. But anywhere in the second, basically anywhere in the second round, I wouldn't really push back. And you're getting him sometimes in the, early third, mid third.
Right. Can someone explain like why Debo and Ayuk go ahead of Waddle? Like to me, they're kind of like similar structural bets, but Waddle just has like clearly better peripherals to me than those guys do.
It's that you can talk yourself into one of them.
Four guys.
It's that you can say this year's the year. This is the year for, and for me it's easier to see with Ayuk because I think he's better. Yeah. But Debo, it's like, well, what if McCaffrey, falls off a little bit and they go back to some of the Debo stuff? And yeah.
For me, the case for Debo is just what if he scores 35 points in a given week, which is very possible. But I mean, I think also what if Waddle scores 35 points in a given week? Like I don't know. I struggle. I haven't clicked Debo. I've been actually, I think at 0 on him.
Wow. I mix him in sometimes. I try to get a little. Adams and Debo are similar. Where like I'm not really targeting them at all, but I don't want to be at a 0 on those guys.
I think I just have brand loyalty to Adams at this point. He's just like won me a lot of money in his career, and I just can't. And he's still so good. That's the problem.
Yeah.
He's still very good.
He is good. He's good.
I mean, it was
the second round pick with Gardner Minshew. I don't know, but he is good.
I think he is. I think he is. I still like Adams, but it's tough because there's like Devontae Adams. Whenever Devontae Adams conversation comes up, I'm like, well, I know like the only person who's gonna agree with me is Leone. Like I know have my back on the stake, but.
Oh man. So all right, I want to make sure we save enough time for the elite tight end discussion.
Yeah,
because that's where
let's wrap with that. Yeah.
So we talk about the wide receivers dry up very quickly. I don't think you can save yourself. I think what you can do is you can kind of budget. You can't dig yourself out of a hole with like a team that has Curtis Samuel and Mike Williams as wide receiver 3 and 4 is probably pretty dead. But if they're your wide receiver 5, I'm listening. What did you do with that extra money that you saved? You got your budget wide receiver 5, right? Your budget wide receiver 6 with some upside in a Jalen Polk. Okay. What did you spend that extra money on? And I think there's a debate about what to spend that extra money on because you're getting running back prices that are way low. For some of these archetypes, you're getting tight end prices that are way low. I mean, LaPorta feels pretty fairly priced.
Yeah, he's pricey.
Overpriced. I think he's overpriced too. But like Kelce, 4th round all the time. If you're in these puppies, 4th round Kelce, he's there all the time. McBride, pretty nicely priced in the 4th round. Mark Andrews. I am taking half-court Lamar Jackson shots from the middle of the 4th round, and Andrews is coming back sometimes. I would say about half the time, maybe 60% of the time, I'm sinking a half-court shot on Lamar Andrews.
I love that. You're just like throwing up the alley-oop.
This is sacrilegious, this metaphor. Yeah, you're sinking the half-court shot. And I'm like, look, it's the puppy, man. I'm gonna attempt some of these half-court shots and see if I get them in. And if you have 3 wide receivers, Lamar Andrews, like that should not be available.
Would you ever consider a mid-third Flowers to try and get all 3?
I am now. I'm definitely going to do that now. Because, first of all, it makes it way more likely Lamar gets back to you in the mid-4th.
Right. So that's why I would do Flowers first instead of Lamar first. Yeah.
You could even talk me into Flowers like, I don't know. I would have a hard time taking Flowers over Neighbors, but like if Neighbors is gone.
Do that. But I don't have any issue taking Flowers over like Smith, Pittman, DK.
Exactly. Yeah. So you take them in like, I don't know, like the 305. You take Flowers because you want it closer to the front half of the board for Andrews to come back.
Right. Exactly. Like that's if Neighbors is gone, I don't really care about anybody of the other guys. Like I don't care about Jacobs, I don't care about Etienne, I don't care about DK, Smith, Higgins. So it's like a lot of times that's when I kind of default to Josh Allen if I'm stuck in that purgatory. But
I've been taking Smith there and trying to get Hurts to come back.
Smith is fine. Yeah, that's good. But yeah, I think you could do I think Flowers and Higgins are like part of that group, even though their ADP are lower. I think they just should be part of that group, and Dell too. To me,
I agree.
And then you could take Flowers really early and then try to get the double. And then it's just another excuse to draft Jaylen Warren.
Wait, why Jaylen Warren?
Don't they play? Am I wrong on that?
They it may be. Oh, they played week 16. Did they?
That's the 16.
Yeah, they played week 16. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Houston week 17. Pitt.
Yeah.
16.
That's right. Yeah. Those four form like a
with KC.
A quadruple matchup. Yeah, with KC. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
Worst case,
I'm gonna draft a lot of
Jaylen
Warren.
Flowers.
These are all slow drafts, so I can do this
worst
like
case,
later
you do the
today.
Flowers. If Lamar doesn't come back, you just take Dell, and then you at least have the mini correlate.
Yeah. Oh wow. And then you opened up Stroud as well. So you have
then you've opened up Stroud or Andrews in the 5th.
All right. I'm doing it. I'm taking third round Zay Flowers.
I just came up. All right, we just did this here. Got unlocked.
I mean, that's a fun way to mix things up. I got to mix things up in these puppies, man.
Yeah. You take Nico in the 2nd and you just run it all the way through.
Mark Andrews is kind of the dude of this I most want to talk about because we're
totally.
I guess I think we're pretty aligned on the elite tight end thing. Do you want to kind of just quickly run through like why you see the tight ends as the key here and not the running back value?
Well, it's because, like I said earlier, I don't think the running back profiles in this range are actually like league-breaking talent profiles. There's no like elite rookie in this class. There's no plausibly the best running back in the NFL with like an injury concern. Like I think Gibbs and Hall were just very unique bets last year, and there isn't any running back that profiles like them. The tight ends, I mean, Andrews isn't unique. He's always there. He just hasn't been this cheap since like 2021. The last time he was this cheap, he was on 80% of the final scenes or whatever else. Like,
he was mega chalk in the finals.
Right. Like he just completely dominated the entire tournament. His peripherals were basically the same in 22 that they were in 21. They just had kind of issues offensively. They weren't as good last year, but they were still very good. And I don't think that we just need to assume that everything is linear, that like because Mark Andrews had a mildly down year, that he can't just then bounce back and be peak Mark Andrews again. And even if he has the exact same peripherals as last year, I would easily sign up for that in the 5th round.
There's also, I think, just quickly on that, passing volume upside in this offense that there never was when he had the efficiency that he used to have. So even if you're getting this version forever, we do have, kind of in a TJ Hawkinson sort of way, like he can get there now, maybe on them passing a lot more.
Yeah. God, I've seen what you've done for TJ Hawkinson. Please do that for Mark Andrews. I agree. I think, and what if the defense is worse? I think I've heard you say that before, but that's a really compelling thing too, is last year they wanted to pass, had too good of a defense. They lost a lot of starters. They lost almost every coach on the defensive side of the ball. Right? Like they lost McDonald. He took one of his assistants. They lost another assistant to Miami. So they lost they have just one of their 4 top defensive coaches is still around, and they lose Queen. They lose Clowney. Like it's really been hollowed out. So I could see them having to pass way more this year. I think Andrews is like honestly like the most mispriced player in the entire tournament. I think he, we were just talking about what happens when Neighbors and those guys are off the board, and like what would you do at the 305? Like if that was where I had to take Andrews, I'd be totally comfortable just taking Andrews in that spot. I think he should be the tight end 1. I think that's where he should go in the middle of the 3rd round. He just doesn't go there, so I want to just be shoveling him in.
Yeah, I truly don't understand. So to me, like part of the profile with the tight ends, with the elite tight ends, right, is that you want these guys to play a different position than everybody else, and you want them to be the number 1 on their team. You want a number 1 wide receiver with tight end eligibility. Like those guys are truly rare. And we've seen that profile just crush, right? Like teams with the elite tight ends, especially in these types of tournaments, I think are set up extremely well to be able to get through the gauntlet of single week elimination. Because if you get that kind of dude and you pair him with hits at the other positions, it's just really, you're just really well set up. And you're more likely, kind of like we talk about the running back and the wide receiver stuff. Like, what are you able to find later? Are you able to find a 260-pound wide receiver who's the number one on his own team later? Typically not. I mean, LaPorta we got last year, McBride we got last year, and so it's not like it never happens. We also got Puka last year. We're not really looking for Pukas again. We're looking for Kyrans. We're looking for Chubas. We're looking for Devin Singletaries, because those are like the things we typically find a lot more in the late rounds, and especially with the tight end class that we got that's like Bowers and like, Sanat, I think was pretty interesting, but he's already getting really expensive. Jakob Sanders with the athleticism, I was pretty concerned. And then he loses draft capital. And it's like, so to me, I'm not really drafting him at all. And then a lot of the later round guys are kind of like, Noah Fant might run more routes as the fourth option in Seattle or whatever. Like Hunter Henry might catch touchdowns when Drake Maye goes off. Like Juwan Johnson could be part of a more concentrated offense and has, got some interesting traits. Like I like those guys. I draft all those guys, but I don't see them as like potential giant spike week producers. They're more like get in the end zone for me in the right week, please.
Or as sustained season long guys that are like changing the shape of your team. Like this is what I talked about a lot in the article, was like I don't think that like that profile of a Juwan Johnson or a Tyler Conklin or a K. Dotton or a Hunter Henry is like, like an undraftable profile. Like they have a purpose, right? They're going to run routes. They're going to be out there, and you hope you get the touchdowns allocated in a way that works for your team. But when you draft 3 of them, right? If you're doing late round tight end this year, like you said, you're not getting the Trey McBride bet. You're not getting the Sam LaPorta bet. So if you're doing late round tight end and your thing is, I'm just going to take Hunter Henry and Tyler Conklin and K. Dotton, it's like, all right, like you can advance that team. Like it's a viable approach. Yeah, I'm not going to say it's not viable, but you went from 18 chances to pick a league winning asset to 15 chances to pick a league winning asset, because those guys just like aren't going to be, right. They might have the spike week in week 17. That's possible, but they're not going to be guys where like you get to the playoffs and you're hitting refresh and you're seeing like, how much exposure do I have to K. Dotton? Like they're not that guy. We're not naming the season after K. Dotton. It's just like you scroll down your team and you're like, oh, I have K. Dotton. Like would be cool if he found the end zone. But that's just all like that's going to happen with those guys. So I just think you're reducing your margin for error when you are siphoning off 1/6 of your bullets to non-talent based bets. And I think that's just, it makes life difficult for you, because I think you then have to really be diligent in how you're building the rest of your team of like, how am I going to be able to get the upside to make up ground on the rest of my opponents? Because, you're starting as like a 50th percentile team. You take those 3 tight ends, you're just still at a 50th percentile team, and you forewent opportunities to try and gap the field and build a super team. That's kind of how I would describe it, is that you have 18 opportunities to build a super team. When you take those guys, you're foregoing one of them. I mean, it's kind of the same idea of why I don't really love taking a guy like we're talking about like the Tyler Lockett conversation. It's like, I think he's a fine pick and I think he can work on teams, but that's kind of a lost opportunity to build a super team, in the sense that like he's not likely going to be a defining player of your team. You don't have to pick 18 shoot for the moon bets, but I think you put too much pressure on the bets you take if you only take a couple. So I prefer to play elite tight end through the more talent-based bets, stick on one guy late, and then you have more opportunities to just have more flexibility with how you build the rest of your team. Because if you're taking the Otten, Henry, Conklin path, and you want to mix in a Sutton or a Lockett, it's like, how many of these upside bets are you now taking that have a reasonable chance of being like a round 2 player you drafted in round 7? Because you might only have a couple of those opportunities, and you better hit them. Otherwise, you're just one of the teams.
Right. Yeah, that's. I don't have any pushback with any of that. I think that's perfectly said. I guess I would, with the elite tight ends. I mean, we agree that Andrews is a smash. Where are you at on Kelce? Because he's the other guy that's like, I'm like, he's the number one. He's the number one on a Patrick Mahomes offense still. Right. He just signs an extension. Like he's, I still feel like that some of the retirement concern is like weirdly priced in. He's not retiring, like it's too cheap. It's too cheap for, I mean, the Rashee Rice suspension should have rocketed up his ADP. Nope, no one cares. Yeah. He does go in the 2-3 turn on DraftKings. It's one of the spots where I feel like DraftKings. Yeah, he goes to the tight end one on FFPC as well. So it's a spot where I feel like the underdog market I usually kind of defer to is like the sharper ADP, but I think they have it wrong here. Like my thing with Andrews and Kelce is that not only are they big wide receivers, but they are the number ones. You know, and you could say maybe Andrews isn't because Flowers will take a step forward, and you could say maybe Kelce isn't because he's going to fall off some, and by the end of the year it'll be Rice and Worthy, and you know he won't be the clear number one. But like, you know, who's definitely not the number one? Sam LaPorta. He's got Amon-Ra St. Brown there. Like it is like an underneath target earner. Like that, he's not the number one. He just isn't. And you don't even think he will be when you take him. You're just like, he's good.
Yeah.
Which I think he's, you know, I don't think LaPorta's like the worst pick ever, but it does strike me as strange that he goes ahead of Kelce. And then you're also looking at like, you know, Trey McBride, who I like, but by the end of the year, I mean, he's less likely to be the number one than Andrews, I think.
For sure.
So I don't, there's like a couple spots where I'm like, why are we ordering these guys like this?
I agree with you. I mean, I'm probably not going to have a massive bag of Kelce because I'm going to have a massive bag of Andrews, and that's just going to like take up a very large portion of the elite tight end teams that I'm drafting. Like, you know, you're sort of, I don't know how many bully tight end teams I'm going to be taking. It won't be zero, but it's probably not going to be more than
I would have thought. Yeah.
So like if I just say like that the bully tight end teams and the non-elite tight end teams more or less cancel out, or maybe probably still more of the non-elite tight end teams than bullies. It's like my like total exposure for all these guys can't really be above like 80 or 90 if we're just doing out the math. So like if I'm taking 25% Andrews, like I probably can't also take 25% Kelce, but I'll probably take like 15% Kelce. I think he is the next best bet of this group. The other thing is I want to really take a ton of Bowers. I don't know how you feel about him, but that's another stand that I really want to make because I just think he's really, really underpriced for his talent. And I understand the situational concerns, but you know, I haven't taken that much yet. I think I only have like 10% now because I've just been kind of letting his ADP fall and fall and fall. But now that I'm pretty content that I think it's settled in where it's going to be for a while, like now I'm going to just start just packing it in with him.
My thing with Bowers is that I think he should fall further than this.
Really?
Because like, isn't it sort of the Dalton Kincaid bet, but
with an infinitely better prospect?
Yes, an infinitely better prospect, but you're trading Gardner Minshew in for Josh Allen. So
right, but we had Kyle Pitts with Wash Matt Ryan. We took him in the 4th.
Yeah, fair enough. But like how many routes is he actually running? Like, is he in a full-time role? You think? Because I mean, they have Myers and Adams, and then they have Maye running players. A fair amount.
I think they have 2 good players, and they'll get them on the field. That's my hope.
Okay, I think Myers is actually
maybe that's wrong.
I think Myers is pretty decent. Like he's not.
Myers is fine. I don't know. I think if they liked Michael Mayer, they wouldn't have drafted Brock Bowers 13th overall. Like it's.
I think they tried to get up for Penix.
This regime didn't draft Michael Mayer.
That's true. I think they planned to use Michael Mayer as their starting tight end. Tried to get it for Penix. Probably. The Falcons did what the Falcons did, and then they panic picked Bowers. That's my read on it. It's like what they took the guy that the highest guy. He shouldn't be here. This is crazy. He's here. He's the 5th overall best player in the whole draft. And then they took him, and now they're figuring out the plan.
That's possible
because they never had a plan. That's my read on it.
I mean, I think the landing spot sucks. Like I think Luke Getsky is a moron. I think that this offense is going to do a lot of bullshit. And I think it'll be frustrating at times. But like, man, he's not expensive. Like, you're getting. Look at how many of these like way worse rookies we're drafting in like the 6th round. Like Bowers is just a better football player than Ladd McConkey and Keon Coleman and like Brian Thomas and these guys. Like he just is. Like I get it's an undesirable environment, but you know, in the rookie environment where every rookie is being priced up to the hilt, you know, we're taking elite prospects at the 1-2 turn and the 2-3 turn. We're taking middling prospects in the 6th. Like, I don't know. I can't take like the potential best tight end of all time in like the 10th.
That's a pretty good case. But like, he's going ahead of Dallas Goedert. That seems a little nuts. Like
Awesome.
Goedert's the clear number 3 on the Eagles and is
Brock Bowers
good.
The best tight end of all time.
Goedert's
not.
I mean, he's a pretty specific tight end, right? Like he's undersized. He's potentially in the same way that we have issues with Pitts. Like, how much is he out there on play action stuff around the goal line?
I think a lot. He's quite good at blocking.
He's good at blocking, but you're dependent on them running 12, which maybe they just are in 12 around the goal line. But like Mayer's going to be a better traditional tight end, I think. Right? So like the big slot receiver thing is
like Mayer's just better at blocking, like probably.
Yeah, like you want to run. I've got a goal line.
Wasn't a better blocker in college, I don't think, but maybe the size catches up.
The size, yeah. I'm running I formation at the goal line. Who's on the field?
I hope both. Right, that's the hope.
Well, they said I formation, so I got the fullback. So I made you pick.
Oh, I see. I don't know. Both, and it's just Adams. You get Myers off the field.
I actually like that. I like that jumbo package. Yeah. Okay. All right. You convinced me to move him up some for sure. I mean, I thought he was going to fall more, and he just isn't. So
maybe this is just cope because, like, ever since this Raiders landing spot, like I have drafted just an insane amount of him in Dynasty. I'm at 42% exposure now in Dynasty of Bowers. So at this point, like this bet just kind of has to work. I don't really have like room in my mind to consider the possibility it doesn't. But it's just gotten to a price point where like I just think he's such an incredible player that I don't have to pay a premium for. Like, I don't know. Like we might be drafting this guy in the first round next year. He could be the best. He might be the best tight end in human history. And we're worried about Dallas Goedert. The human race has never produced a tight end like this. We never will again.
This full case is you're not holding back.
I mean, we've made the case on the Dynasty shows before, but like this is a guy who led all of college in yards after catch for 3 consecutive years. He produced over 3 yards per run as a freaking freshman. He got rushing work at a program full of 5 stars. He is arguably the 3rd best wide receiver in this draft class if they changed his position. We get to draft him in the 10th round. And I don't know, if I get to the end of the season and it doesn't hit, it's like, fine. I think it's still going to hit somewhat because I think talent we view it as a ceiling factor, but it's also a floor factor. And I think he's just talented enough that he's going to have good games. But if I get to the end of the season and I lost because I took like 7% Brock Bowers because I was like, oh, Jake Ferguson's going to play on play action. It's like, I'm not going to live with myself.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not either.
This might be
the
only time I ever get a chance to take Brock Bowers outside of the first 20 picks.
Yeah.
I don't want to sit it out. I don't.
I do think he should be cheaper. He should be cheaper than this, just given it's the Raiders. He's clearly not going to be the number 1. He might not run all the routes. Like, it's just like a lot of reasons why I feel like he's not. But you're right. I mean, he adds a lot of upside to any. He adds that upside we're saying isn't available later in the 10th round.
I don't think he should be cheap.
65th,
egregiously underpriced. I have him ranked at 78.
Wow. Okay. I mean, I thought he would fall more, but I think I know Sean's really into him still.
Way to go, Sean.
Yeah, and so you're talking me into the fall's not materializing, and I have a choice here. I can be stubborn and sit out Brock Bowers rookie year, or I can
realize when we get the Michael Mayers running with the ones tweets. Maybe that's your chance.
We are getting those. We're getting Michael Mayers. They're using both guys, but Mayer TE1. And I think we're going to get that. We're going to get that. Yeah.
We will get that.
We're going to get that. You just can't project enough targets for this ADP. We're going to get that too.
We will. And that's why I'm only at 10% right now. My ideal exposure by the end of the drafts is like starts with a 3. but I'll be patient. I'll be patient. I'm not gonna jump the shark on Brock Bowers yet, but I want to be. I'll put it this way: it's week 8. Brock Bowers has just scored his 2nd touchdown on the sickest play you've ever seen in your life. Don't you want to be happy? Like, you're sitting on your couch watching that game. Do you want your reaction to be like, oh, like, I drafted like Maven Joku? Like, don't you wish that you're like pumped?
I hope they call a screen for Dallas Goedert. That's the only way he's gonna get targeted.
Like, that's maybe it's FFPC that you get all your Brock Bowers exposure, where you get the tight end premium and all that. But I don't know. I'm pretty excited to be on Bowers. He goes cheap enough, you can just take 3 tight ends with him anyway.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, if you go, because I actually don't mind like the Tyler Conklin, Noah Fant, Kate Otten, that group, Hunter Henry, but like those guys paired with Bowers is that now we do have some late season. Maybe that's the counter. Maybe you've actually unlocked the counter to elite tight end. It's Bowers plus 2 boring guys.
Yeah, anytime that I get locked out of, if it's like the 6th round's gone by, I missed the boat on Kelce, McBride, Andrews, LaPorta, Kittle, Pitts. Like I just like hit the star button on Bowers. I'm like, where he's going to be on this team. The only thing stopping me from having more Bowers is that I have so much of those guys. But they also don't stop me from taking Bowers. I also don't have a problem doing like Andrews and Bowers.
Yeah. All right. I'm just capitulating on Bowers. I just don't want to be out.
You don't have to. You can be boring. You go talk to Sam. I'm sure he probably has Bowers ranked behind Hunter Henry.
Bowers 120. 120 would be way too high. 155 for Bowers. I've seen Sam's ranking.
That sounds right. Look, all I'm saying is Hunter Henry is going to be on the field for 85% of the round. Brock Bowers, I'm not sure.
Welcome to the roast of Sam Sherman on Legendary.
Yeah. Love you, Sam.
We gotta get you on ADP chasing so Sam can fire back.
I'll come on at some point. I'll come on after. I'll come on during the finals maybe, and I'll wear my Celtics jersey and get Sam in a good mood.
Okay, good. All right, we can leave it there. This is a lot of fun. Jacob, tell people about what you got going on.
We got stuff going on. Thinking about thinking. We got our Best Ball Mania rankings. We got the piece that we kind of referenced throughout the show on the economy. We'll have more pieces being written all the way throughout the summer. It's basically going to be best ball focused content. Is going to be the bedrock of the site from now until really like at least August, once we start getting into FFPC season. So, make sure to check everything out there. If you're still doing Dynasty stuff, by all means, I'll have updated Dynasty rankings there, all the rookie draft content. If you're curious of any of my thoughts on any of the rookies in particular, deeper dive from a best ball perspective, all the rookie content there is pretty transferable too, and have write-ups on every player from this year's class. So check all that out. Otherwise, I'm on Twitter, and thanks a lot for having me on.
It was a pleasure. I've got FFPC rankings over at Legendary Upside that just launched, Underdog rankings, DraftKings rankings, updating every day. Go check out Legendary Upside. We also have some Dynasty content on there as well. Steph Miller's got her Dynasty Startup Guide coming out. We've been trying to get that out. I think probably Monday we'll have that out for you. So look for that. Also some more best ball content coming out. Sacrilegious in the lab, looking deep into portfolio diversification ideas. And I'm gonna try to get some writing done in the next week or so as well. So legendaryupside.com.
Very much of that this year, so I'm gonna check that out. Maybe I'll reconsider whether or not to diversify my portfolio.
Yeah, my thing is like I want to take big stands and then diversify around those stands. That's kind of where I've gotten to.
Agree with that. I have like a core, which is basically like Waddle, Patriots, Jags, early tight ends, Warren, Brooks, Wicks, Leggett, Downs. That's kind of like the main guys, and then everybody else kind of correlation structure.
Structure and being open. I mean, the thing with the Bowers thing, like that's one where I'm like, how do you end up with like way too much Tyler Lockett who's fine. He's a good pick, right? Or Sutton or whatever. It's because like you never took Bowers because you thought he should be in the 115 range instead of the 101 range. It's like, who cares though? Who actually cares? So I'm glad you got me, because I think mixing in some of those ones are like, how strongly do you actually feel about this? Are you going to sit out a season? Are you going to open up week 17 teams and you don't have a shot at having this dude on them? Those types of guys you do not want to be taking stands against, or, you want to be taking stands for if you feel really, really strongly, but you don't want to be like just kind of stumbling into decently sized stands on dudes. That's what I'm trying to avoid this year.
Yeah, agreed. All right.
Hey guys.
Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
See you later.